Hello, human peoples. You're listening to the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. To support us and gain access to great exclusive podcasts like Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and our latest show, Spiel Boys, head over to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. We do game streaming, movie nights with our patrons every Friday night, and you can even commission your own podcast about anything you want. Literally anything, within reason, and we have to do it. You are quite frankly out of excuses not to go visit patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds.
It's the movie of the year.
Yeah! The feel-good romp of 2021.
Hey, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
My name is David Bell.
My name is Tom Ryman.
And we just watched The Power of the Dog.
The Power of the Dog.
I'm glad you did it.
Yeah.
"25 years since our first run together. 1900 and nothing.
It's a long time.
What you doing? Getting mixed up with her.
You are marvelous, Rose. We were married Sunday.
This is on Netflix.
It is. It is on
Yeah.
Netflix.
It is on Netflix if people want to check it out.
Mm-hmm.
We will be spoiling it, and it is a spoily
It's a spoily movie. It's based on a novel from, I think, the 60s. Movie's written and directed by Jane Campion. It's getting a lot of award buzz. A lot of people clucking their tongues and being like, "Oh, that's a good movie" at high society parties and stuff.
Exactly, where Kirsten
Not really
Dunst
clucking their tongues,
can't
but
play
a
piano.
lot of people wearing monocles and being like, "This is a fine motion picture."
Yeah, and this is a slow, it's a slow weekend. We were going to do this or Macbeth, but I noticed the Beans did Macbeth recently.
Yeah,
so,
they did it as a Coen Brothers, I believe.
Yeah, so it makes sense.
So you guys can head over
see that.
Yeah, we will probably watch The Tragedy of Macbeth anyway. I don't know if we'll do a podcast on it, but you guys can head over to the Small Beans Network and check out their episode on it if you want to hear some cool dudes talk about Macbeth.
Right. But this one, it's got Benny Combs.
Mm-hmm. Benny Combs.
It's got Kirsten Dunst.
Benny Cumberbuns.
Yep. Jesse Plemons.
Yep. Jesse Plemons. Cody Smith McPhee.
Yep. And it's essentially it's like gritty Fresh Prince, right? It's about a kid's struggle with his Uncle Phil.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
He goes to live with his uncle in Bel Air.
Yeah.
In Bel Air, Montana in the 1920s.
This is a gritty Western, and it was presented... I expected a completely different film. Just because it's advertised as like they're all kind of held hostage by Benny.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it presented him as being like a villain, like a classic villain.
Yeah.
And this is not a traditional film at all.
No, that is not what the movie's about. The movie is actually about a lot of things, one of them being sort of subverting ideas of masculinity that tend to be pervasive in Westerns and Western mythology.
Yeah. How did you like this film?
I liked it a lot.
Yeah, me too. I really liked it.
This is a very, very good movie. As Dave pointed out, we are going to spoil it. So if you had any interest in watching this movie at all, I suggest you go ahead and hit pause, flick pause with your little digits, and go put your peepers on this movie on Netflix.
Absolutely, because it's very good. It's very good.
It's very
movie.
good. It's very good.
So if you had any interest in seeing it, it's worth seeing just because of where it heads. It's nice to be surprised by this movie. It's not like a twist, it's not, but it's also like it's not traditional storytelling. It sets up something that I was like, okay, this will be interesting, and then it doesn't do that thing at all.
It does a thing that is arguably more interesting, but much less traditional.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a very interesting subversion of a couple of things, and also it's a little bit of a complicated movie, but not super complicated. It's just a little dense. It deals with a lot of themes.
Yeah. I would call it morally complex.
It's morally complex. It has a lot of themes like isolation, grief, but also a little bit about grace, but also it's a lot. It's about a lot of things.
Yeah, it's about a lot of things, and it's a slow burn in the sense that, like, technically speaking, not much happens in it, but at the same time, a lot happens in it. Like, I never felt bored watching it. I was never like, oh, get to the when is the thing gonna happen?
Mm-hmm.
You know, because it all feels like it's all kind of building towards something.
Yes.
But in a way that is always interesting. And so, like, the ending, you could argue, is like a little anticlimactic, but also not at all anticlimactic because of everything that you've been watching.
It's an emotional climax, yeah. And
yeah,
the thing that it's building towards, one of my favorite things about watching the movie, before we get down to brass tacks and actually get into the specifics of it, was that you can tell that it's building towards a thing, but it's kind of hard to predict what the thing is.
Yes, the movie is completely unpredictable.
Yeah, but I will say when it happens, you're like, oh, of course. Like, all the pieces are there, and it's just, you look back at what's happened, and you're like, oh, yeah, this was definitely what this story was building towards.
Right, all right, so going into spoilers, it's almost like watching a murder mystery in reverse.
How do you mean?
Like, all the pieces are there, if in fact the ending is he did it on purpose.
Oh, he 100% did.
Yeah, I figured he did it on purpose.
Yeah, I don't think that's ambiguous. Actually,
I didn't think so either. Yeah. I had a moment where I was like, "Shit, did he do it on purpose?" And then
he absolutely did.
Yeah, the last shot, it's like, "Oh yeah, he did it on purpose."
Well, if you go and think about everything, if you just think about that character and just watch everything he's done from the first scene. It's like, oh, he 100% did this on purpose.
And what I mean by it being a murder mystery in reverse is, like, if someone showed up and was like, who killed this person? I've decided they were murdered. This is like watching all the pieces, them setting it all up. But you don't even realize that that's what you're watching. Like, they do a very good job at, like, it never occurred to me that he was doing that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I like about it, is that, it's not like filled with red herrings or anything, but there's bits of dialogue that you don't even realize are important.
Yes.
Because they're just naturally woven in to the story, like a rope covered in anthrax.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is about okay. So it starts with Benedict Cumberbatch and Jesse Plemons.
Yeah, returning.
And they are ranchers.
Yeah, and they're returning from a drive.
Yeah, I have a question, Tom.
Uh-huh.
What's a cattle drive? Where are those cows? Where do they need to be?
I don't know.
Why are they?
I don't know much about it. I know they're just moving them.
Yeah, but like they're cows. I don't know. What do they need to go do?
I know you have to rotate them because obviously they can't sit on the same patch of land all the time. They'll just eat it dry and there won't be anything there. So you rotate them to give the different fields a chance to replenish.
Okay, that makes sense.
But I don't know much about it. So I don't know much about ranching. I just know you need a lot of fucking land.
Right.
So they're coming back from they're bringing these cows back to the ranch.
Yeah. And Benedict Cumberbatch, he's a real, like, he's Paul Newman in HUD. Like, he's shitty cattle guy. And actually, now that I think about it, because HUD also has like a disease in it. I gotta watch HUD again. Anyway. It's HUD-like, is my point. So
I've never seen HUD, so...
Oh, HUD is like the only Paul Newman plays an asshole. Like, it's about him playing a prick. And it's actually kind of similar to this movie in that it's like, kind of, from what I remember, more like a slow burn drama than like an action or anything. It's just Paul Newman is an unpleasant man in it. And
it's a tagline in the movie. Paul Newman is unpleasant.
So yeah, they stop at a restaurant with Kirsten Dunst and her son, who is like, I'd best describe her son as someone who clearly knows that being in the West sucks. Like he feels like he belongs today in today's world and doesn't realize it.
He's also, there's some sort of maladjustment to him. Like he has to he does a lot of rituals. So the movie doesn't ever say anything, but he's very unsentimental. He has to do a lot of rituals, like he runs his thumb over the teeth of his comb without even thinking about it. When he's nervous, he has to go out back and do a hula hoop for a certain number of times.
Angry hula hoop, yeah.
Yeah, so he's very...
he's a little off.
He's a little off. Yeah, I wouldn't want to say that, because I don't... But it's basically... He's got some sort of social adjustment issues, and, he has his rituals to deal with them. But if you're a shit kicker in the Old West, you're just going to look at him and be like, look at that fucking freak. So that's like what he's dealing with.
Yeah, he's not traditionally masculine, and so he's getting harassed for that.
He has a lisp. He's very thin. He's inside doing quote unquote woman's work with his mom.
Yeah.
He's the waiter serving them dinner, bringing, he's wearing a little towel over his arm in the way that you do to prevent splashing from drinks, which he explains, and they just make fun of him even more.
Right. So they're the rough and tough cowboys showing up.
Yeah.
And they kind of take over the place for a night, harass the son, and are kind of like shitty towards Kirsten Dunst. Except for his brother, Benedict Cumberbatch's brother, Jesse Plemons, is clearly like embarrassed by it, and he clearly doesn't want this life. He wants to be he doesn't really want to drink. He can't really control the other men. Like, he's not respected.
Yeah.
His brother calls him Fatty. Like,
his brother calls him Fatso instead of his name.
Yeah.
But like, we get in the first couple of scenes, we get the clear indication of their relationship, which is Jesse Plemons is the person that like inherited the ranch. Like, he's the money guy. Yeah. He's the guy that calls the shots. Phil, Benedict Cumberbatch's character, is the hard-edged one who like runs the men. The men listen to him. They don't listen to Jesse Plemons. And we get from their first scene together that Phil is real nostalgic for the old days of when they used to do this, when they would go, like, he's talking to Plemons, who's, I forget his name, George. He's talking to George and is like, hey, remember how we used to go camp out in the mountains with Bronco Henry, who was their mentor, the guy who taught them how to be ranchers, which we learn more about this figure as the movie goes on. But he's like, hey, remember how we used to do that? We should go do that again. We should go like camping out there. And he's talking about how great it used to be. And it's clear George never really liked that lifestyle.
Yeah.
And is he's more refined than Phil is.
He wants the fancy life. Yeah. He's gunning for that fancy life.
He is gunning for the fancy life. Yeah, that's true.
Phil is, if you ever hung out on the punk scene, everybody knows Phil, which is a miserable shit who refuses to bathe.
Yeah.
Like, that's what he is. And he doesn't like it when other people are happy. At least that's how he presents himself at first. He is just a miserable, like, shitty guy.
And he resents anyone trying to grow up, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And he's obsessed with, the good old days.
He's obsessed with the good old days, yeah.
And so you kind of see what's being set up. Jesse Plemons has an interest in Kirsten Dunst, what's her character's name? I should look that up.
Rose.
Rose, right. So they get a romantic thing going, and they get married. And then Kirsten Dunst hits a man with her car, and Plemons has to cover it up.
She hits Kieran Culkin with her car.
Yeah.
And Jesse Plemons has to cover it up. No. Yeah. That's Fargo season 2.
Yeah. So this is what it's setting up, where I was like, oh no, Kirsten Dunst is gonna like die or something, because now this young boy who was harassed by this guy and like
Phil and his entire team of ranchers.
Yeah, and so you expect it's going to be like, oh no, he goes off to school basically, and I thought like, oh god, he's going to like inherit everything, and it's going to be him and Benedict Cumberbatch, and it's going to be like, like Benedict Cumberbatch is going to like murder them, or an accident's going to happen or something. Like, you kind of see those pieces falling into place, and that's not at all what happens.
No.
And so it's a lot of so it's Jesse Plemons trying to like push this fancy life. Kirsten Dunst like does not seem to like it either.
She's not. She's
trying at first, but
there's a weird kinship between Benedict Cumberbatch and Rose, which drives a lot of the tension. Yeah. The primary conflict of the film is that Phil hates Rose and is cruel to her. Like, he makes her life at the ranch a living hell. He's just constantly tormenting her, teasing her, belittling her. He's a son of a bitch, and he's mean.
Right.
He's mean to the kid too. So she's caught.
But she also,
she's also feeling distant from Jesse Plemons because he wants her to be this refined high society person, and she's not really. Like they demonstrate it with a piano. Like he goes and buys her a piano, and she's like, well. It's a very nice piano. It's a baby grand.
And she keeps saying, I don't really play the piano very well.
Right. She's like she used to play along with. She says I used to play along with the moving pictures. She used to sit in the music pit and just play along with movies to play the soundtrack for movies.
Right. Meanwhile, the thing we learn about Benedict Cumberbatch is that he went to fancy schools. Right. That's the idea.
Yeah.
Is he actually has that high society knowledge? He just rejected it. So it's this thing where like she's not really that, and it doesn't seem like she wants to be necessarily.
No, she tries to be for Jesse Plemons, but fails. They have a dinner party with the governor, and George and Phil's parents come over, and it goes badly because George he's a nice man, but he doesn't say much, and he doesn't stand up for himself to anyone, and so consequently he doesn't stand up for Rose. Really, he just He just sort of absorbs the wounds and just lets them slide. Like he doesn't address them.
He's a real Jesse Plemons character.
He's a real Jesse Plemons character, yeah. Which can cover a lot of ground. He plays a lot of different characters, but like he's a guy that like we mentioned, Phil constantly calls him fatso. He never objects to it. He never really says anything to Phil about how outwardly hostile he is to Rose.
Yeah.
And so the dinner party is a big disaster where Rose is just kind of adrift and can feel that she's not living up to what George has told these people about her. And then it culminates in George being like, hey, Rose can play the piano for us. And she can't. She chokes. She's just like, I can't. It's too much pressure. I can't even remember a song right now.
Right. Yeah.
It's a big disaster. And then Phil comes in and just, so basically but there's a recognized kinship between Rose and Phil that the movie presents but doesn't super linger on, so it's a little subtle. But like they're both kind of isolated, right? And they're both kind of competing for George's attention.
Yes.
Like Phil resents Rose because we see in the first scene he's trying to get George to get more excited about, hey, you remember when we used to go out with Bronco Henry and go camp in the mountains and shit? Let's go do that stuff. Let's get real into it. And George's like, no, I want to do this other life. And him marrying Rose is another wedge between them.
Right.
So
and
they're
so
like, yeah,
Phil's just sort of like a farmhand, like he doesn't really, and like, yeah, he's an asshole too.
Yeah, he's an asshole.
But you do start understanding this movie is very good with the idea of like, well, you understand where everybody's coming from.
Yeah.
And you slowly understand where Phil's coming from, which is that, yeah, he feels kind of edged out of this. And yeah, neither of them, what's funny is, yeah, both of them feel pushed out by Jesse Plemons.
Yeah.
Like, he pushes both of them to this because he wants them to be something that they aren't.
That they
like,
aren't,
and the difference is, for this piano scene, is that he goes to his brother, he goes to Phil, and he's like, it'd be great if you bathed for this. And he just doesn't show up. Unlike, like, Rose tries to fit the role and, like, hates it, whereas Benedict is sort of like, no, I'm not
even going to participate, yeah.
Yeah, and part of it, I think, is that has to do with that background, where it's like, clearly he once had to be forced to fit in, and he doesn't want to.
Yeah, and that becomes, we learn later that he's gay.
Yes.
And he's keeping that secret, and he and Bronco Henry were probably lovers.
Yeah, it's heavily implied.
Yeah. So there's that additional element of, yeah, he's always felt isolated and put aside, so he's trying to cling to this, what he has with Jesse Plemons, and then Kirsten Dunst is an intruder, and he also resents the fact that he can't have a relationship, right? Like, so there's that level of it. So,
and then he also, I think there's also just the financial side of like seeing this new kid and knowing like this is who's inheriting everything.
Yeah.
Not me. Like I'm not second in line,
Yeah, and there's also an element of he clearly thinks that Rose, I don't know if he honestly thinks it, but he has decided that Rose married Jesse Plemons for his money.
Right. I don't know how honest that is either. I think it's just that he feels hurt by it all.
Yeah, and I think that's just a thing he can latch onto to justify his hurt. That's how I interpreted it.
Right. And so, like, this is what's interesting is you get to a point in the film and you realize, like, he's not a good guy.
No.
He's an asshole.
He's not,
But he doesn't, like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, he doesn't do anything physically violent to another person in this.
No. Oh, he beats the shit out of a horse.
He beats a horse, and it's like, that's not cool, man. But you know what I'm saying is that the movie keeps, like, making it seem like at any point he's going to do something violent. And so with the realizations as you go is like, oh, he's just an asshole. Like, that doesn't, I'm not like covering for him.
No.
I'm not making excuses for him, but they do make him a human character.
Right.
Where
He's just kind of this sad, lonely,
he's tragic
guy who's lashing out.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's tragic.
What they do at the same time, and this is like the big moment where I was like, in retrospect, I'm like, fucking, oh, that's so obvious now, is they do a moment where the boy traps a bunny, and he brings it in, and all the help are like, ooh, a bunny, and the mom is like, oh, a bunny, and I instantly wrote that bunny is doomed. But what I expected, like a Green Mile situation, right? I expected Benedict to kill the bunny.
Kill the rabbit, to be mean.
Yeah, exactly. And because that's where the movie is going. The very next scene, the bunny is dead because the boy killed it because he's practicing surgery because he's going to medical school.
Yeah.
So, like, you instantly realize, like, oh no, he's the one who has no problem killing animals. Like,
yeah, and then we eventually learn that, man, we're being told up front that the kid, Cody Smith McPhee, is clinical and not sentimental about death.
Exactly.
He killed this rabbit very easily. He kills another rabbit extremely easily in front of Benedict, which sort of surprises him.
Right.
And just dissected it. And like, so when the help comes in, who is Thomasin McKenzie from Jojo Rabbit and Last Night in Soho, to feed the rabbit a carrot. She's like, is the rabbit hungry? And he's just like, the rabbit's not hungry.
Yeah.
And then she just comes around and sees what he's doing. He's just has this rabbit dissected with his anatomy book open. Like he's he's like, you're like, the kid's like, oh, the kid's a little bit of a sociopath.
Yeah, well, it works really well though, because this is a time when killing animals is just a thing you do.
It's just a thing you
do,
yeah.
He's also a medical student.
Yeah.
And medical students are all kind of sociopaths.
You have to be clinical, yeah.
Yeah. And so, it's part of the job. We need them to not, we can't have doctors crying in hallways, so they all have to be like, a little unemotional. So it doesn't seem odd, but it's clearly setting something up. And in my head, it was setting up like, oh, this kid can defend himself if he needs to.
Yes, he can.
And so and I expect, yes, he sure can. But what you expect again is you're still expecting like, oh, Benedict Cumberbatch is going to become a villain.
Yeah.
And then this kid's going to have to like stand up for his mom.
The second
and it doesn't
part is
play
true.
out that way. Yeah.
Yeah, the second part. So what the movie... okay.
So there's a turning point in the movie that we're getting to.
Yeah,
which is
the turning point is the kid stumbles upon Benedict when Benedict's in his secret place out in the woods where he goes, where he's got a stash of Bronco Henry's things, which include quote unquote fitness magazines, which it's clearly like gay pornography.
Yeah.
But he has it hidden in this box in this kind of overgrown glen, and then this kind of private little lake that he likes to swim in. And he's jerking off with Bronco Henry's handkerchief, which he keeps in his pants.
It's a jerkin hut. Like every,
Yeah, you got a jerkin. You got your laughing place where you go and just fucking fire them out. Just hammer out some ropes.
Yeah,
in God's wilderness.
It's where woods porn comes from.
Yes, he literally has woods porn. That's correct.
Yeah.
So the kid sees him, doesn't see him jerking off. He just sees him swimming with Bronco Henry's handkerchief wrapped around his neck. But clearly understands that he's stumbled into a private moment. Benedict gets mad and chases him off. But after that, the kid comes out to where the men are on the trail for some reason, and the men are all jeering at him because he's wearing these jeans, and they're just making fun of the way that his new jeans sound, and they're calling him these homophobic slurs. And there's an interesting affectation of the way the actor plays the kid, where it's like it's similar to Jesse Plemons in that he just kind of absorbs the insults without addressing them, but it doesn't seem to really bother him. Like he's just kind of like whatever.
Yeah, he plays someone who's often bullied. He's playing it as someone who's like, I know that people yell this stuff at me.
Yeah,
like,
I know that's what you got. Yeah. But Benedict calls him over and is like, hey, I think we got off on the wrong foot. Let me, how about I teach you to ride? I'm going to make you a rawhide rope. It'll be done by the time you go back to school. And he does this in front of Kirsten Dunst. So initially, it's interesting. There's you can tell there's kind of two elements to it. One is he genuinely is trying to make a peace offering with this kid.
Yeah, I think it's the idea of like this kid is not. He didn't say anything, and like he's looking at this kid, and I don't know what I'm trying to think of why his mind has changed in that moment.
Well, I think it's there's a couple of elements to it. One, I think the main thing initially is that he's doing it to piss off Kirsten Dunst. He's like, hey,
yes, that is an element.
If I take this kid under my wing, it's another way I can needle her. And we need to mention the fact that his cruelty has driven Kirsten Dunst to become a raging alcoholic.
Yes.
She is drunk all the time. She has liquor bottles hidden all over the house, all over the ranch. She is constantly fall down, drunk to the point of being physically ill all the time.
Yeah, she is racing to the grave.
She is. Yeah, it's very, very bad. She is so much of an alcoholic that in the middle of all these ranch hands, you can look at her and be like, she's an alcoholic.
Yes, exactly. Like it's like she took it upon herself.
Yeah,
she was like, I'm gonna drink myself to death in like a month.
Yeah, she's really leaving Las Vegas.
Yeah.
But another element, I think it's because he was discovered in his private place where he sort of like goes to commune with Bronco Henry, and he sees that he probably sees a little bit of himself in this kid.
I think that's the idea, is that he starts saying stuff where he's like, you know who else learned to ride late? Bronco Henry. Like he's seeing something in him that he realizes like he should nurture this kid instead of just bullying him.
He wants to, it's part of that nostalgia. A part of a way to chase that feeling he used to have is, well, now I can be Bronco Henry and this kid, and I can mentor this kid.
Yes, it very much feels like that, yeah.
And there's also, there's a small element of he may also be grooming this kid.
Yeah, that's part of it, because I think he also realizes this kid saw like me at my most vulnerable, and he didn't go like tell anybody about it.
Yeah.
And so there is like insinuation of that, but it's never fully explored.
It's never fully explored, but it's there. So there's a bit of a dark element to it. It's complicated. So it's both genuine in that he wants to be a mentor to this kid. He wants to be the new Bronco Henry for this kid and help this kid out the way that Bronco Henry helped him out. There's also the just being an asshole part of it, where he's just doing it to needle Kirsten Dunst. Just one more thing. It's like, haha, now I've got your kid under my wing. Right. And then there's the even darker element, which is not really, it's not as anywhere as near as explored as the other two elements, where it's like there's also an element where he might be grooming this kid. So it's a complicated relationship that he starts up with this kid.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
And he is trying to mentor him.
He is genuinely trying to mentor him.
At least that's how it starts, you know. He's teaching him to ride. I think he's not being like nice to him necessarily, but he's being nicer. Like I guess he is being nice to him. He is being
nice to him, yeah. He's being a mentor.
Yeah.
Like he's teaching him how to ride, and he's like he's gruff, but he's gruff in an endearing way to the kid. Yeah. Where it's like, you fall down, you get back on the horse, you know? Like he's teaching him how to be a man, you know? Like he's mentoring. Yeah,
exactly.
And it's interesting that you point out the thing about him being vulnerable, because that's ultimately his downfall, is when they go out to repair this fence. And Kirsten Dunst sees them leave and freaks out, but she's so fall down drunk she can't catch up to them. So she ends up giving away a bunch of hides.
Something important does happen before this, too.
Oh, what's that?
The boy goes out to ride on his own.
Oh, yeah, that's right. The boy goes out to ride on his own, finds a dead cow just out on the trail, examines it,
and as we already alluded
it.
to, as we already alluded to, they mention the cows. There's a bit of anthrax going around. So, like, again, it looks like what they're setting up now to, like, and why it was like an interesting twist is it's like, oh, the kid's like gonna be a doctor or a vet, and like we're just seeing like coming of age stuff now. Like, so he's going out and he's dissecting this cow, and like it's still a little weird, but like, you know, it's within the tone of the film.
Yeah, and the kid asks him,
stands out, but you don't think about it at first.
Yeah, and the kid asks some pointed questions about it. Like he asks him, do a lot of the calves get eaten by wolves? And he's like, well, no, it's like some of them do. There's also some anthrax. And the kid's like, okay.
Gonna go store that in the old bank.
Yep, he goes out and skins a dead cow that's out in the trail. It is clearly diseased. So they go out to fix this fence. As they're putting the post holes into the ground, they notice a rabbit run off underneath their pile of poles. And Benedict is like, oh, okay, hey, let's play this game. He's like furthering the mentorship thing. Here's this game we used to play. We'll take bets on how long it takes for the animal to run out from underneath this pile as we're throwing the logs off of it. And as they're picking up the logs and throwing them off, he cuts his hand. Yeah, which is it's so like as they it's symbolic. It's symbolic of his vulnerability. He is literally opening up to this kid now.
Yes, and then the kid kills the rabbit without
batting an eye.
He sets it up where he's like, so put it out of its misery. And you can tell Benedict kind of expects like, here's a lesson for this kid. And then the kid just kills it.
Yeah.
And he's just like, oh, shit.
The kid kills it. The kid kills the rabbit as he's comforting it. Like he's like, he's holding because the rabbit's leg is broken. So Benny comes. It's like, all right, you know, just like you said, put it out of its misery. And the kid's like, okay, shh. And then you just hear him crack.
Yeah.
Like he just, no problem, puts this rabbit on ice. And it's very clear that it throws Benedict off. He was not expecting that.
Yeah. He didn't think it would. Yeah.
Yeah. So it cuts them eating the rabbit, and they're shooting the shit. And he's telling the kid about life. He's opening up to the kid. He's like, hey, this is, you know, telling him about, being out on the trail with Bronco Henry when he was a kid and how that, you know.
Yeah.
So they go back to the house. Kirsten Dunst has given away a bunch of hides that Benedict had skinned from the bulls. And we learn that normally he just burns the hides he doesn't need rather than sell them because he's a ornery bastard. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I guess it's like the thing he can control and it's like his thing.
Right.
But to get back at him because she sees them leaving to do this fence job, doesn't want her kid being around Benedict, so she freaks out, and to get back at him, gives his hides away to these Native Americans that are walking through, who is played by Adam Beach from fucking Flags of Our Fathers and to a lesser degree Suicide Squad.
They give her sweet gloves.
Yeah, they give her some sweet gloves. Yeah, that she puts on her hands. And I think the gloves mean something because there's a lot of glove imagery. I can't quite figure that one out. And then she collapses. She's just so fucking poisoned to the gills by her alcoholism that she just collapses. So they get back. She's in bed. Benedict freaks out that his hides are gone. He doesn't have any more hides. And Jesse Plemons comes out and it's like, look, man, calm the fuck down. They are just hides. Like, you were going to burn them anyway. Yeah. And he never really articulates why he's so angry, but I think it's the thing he has control over. Like he's not running the ranch. He's not going to inherit the ranch because Jesse Plemons has got married. So that's gone.
Well, it's also, the whole time he keeps talking about, I'm going to make you this rope.
Yeah.
And teach you how to use it.
Yes,
and
that's true.
And so I think what it is, the rope and stuff, it's the idea that like he doesn't have anything, but he's going to start mentoring this kid, and this kid is something.
Yes.
And the rope is like, well, I'm making this kid this rope.
The rope represents that bond, 100%.
Yeah, and he's like, true. I'm going to make you it before you go to school, And he's like, well, there's not long for that. And so, yeah, they kind of ruin his plans, and he freaks out because we learn, he was making the rope from the hides.
Yeah, that's true. I missed that.
So, it like sets him off in a way where it's like...
He's disproportionately angry over some hides, and
because
that's why.
What it represents to him. Yeah, he had a thing he was doing.
And also, I think there's an element of she got him, too.
Yeah.
She got to him, and it's the first time it's the only time she gets to him. So he's freaking out, but the kid's like, hey, I have some hide. I made some rawhide of my own. You can finish the rope with that. So he gives him the rawhide, and there's like black spots on it. You can tell it's sick, but Benedict doesn't notice. And they sit and they spend a night in the barn as Benedict is twisting this rawhide rope in this bowl of water. So his open wound, his vulnerability, his open heart is mixing with this poisoned, diseased water as he's making this rope for this kid. And he gets very close to telling the kid that he's gay.
Yes.
By telling him a story of how, like, the kid's looking around. He has sort of like a shrine to Bronco Henry in the barn. So he's like, you really cared about Bronco Henry. Was he your best friend? And he's like, yeah, he's my best friend. He was more than that. Like, he saved my life one time. We were stranded out on the trail. I got hurt. He couldn't get me back home before night fell. So we had to spend the night out there, and it was brutally cold. And we survived by bundling up together, in our bedrolls, and we fell asleep like that. And there's like this pause that hangs for a second, and the kid's like, were you naked? And Benedict never answers, but he also doesn't say no. So the kid kind of capitalizes on that, and on that sort of hanging in the background idea that Benedict might be grooming this kid, and they share a cigarette, but it's a little sexual.
Right.
So the kid is clearly like capitalizing on that.
Yeah.
He is using both from that conversation and from the symbolism or the metaphor of his wounded hand in the poisoned water. He is using Benedict's vulnerability against him.
Yeah, and he saw an opening, He
saw an opening, yeah.
He didn't plan for this, but he saw an opening.
I think the ultimate reveal is that he's been planning it since Benedict was like, hey, since he reached out to him initially.
Oh, yeah, I guess the thing is the mom throwing away the hides. It's like, I don't know how you could plan for that.
You couldn't plan for that, but I think...
I feel like yes, he was thinking about it for a while. He was definitely planning for something.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that was like an opening,
Yeah, that was definitely an opening, but he's been thinking about it.
I've
interpreted as he has been planning to kill Benedict since he discovered his mom is drinking herself to death. Because
maybe earlier.
The other thing we learn when they're out on the trail, when Benedict cuts his hand, and they're having that moment eating the rabbit, and they're opening up to each other, and Benedict tells him, I think a story about I forget exactly what story he tells him, but he tells him a story about his relationship with Bronco Henry, and then the kid tells him about how his dad killed himself. He's like, yeah, my dad drank himself to death. Oh, that's right. They speak Benedict speaks very honestly to the kid about how Kirsten Dunst is an alcoholic now. He's like, you have to have noticed that she's drunk all the time and has been this way all summer. And he's like, yeah, I noticed. And Benedict's like, your dad was too, right? And he's like, yeah, right up until he hung himself. I found the body and cut him down.
Yeah, so it's very clear he's like, never again.
Yes, and he's seeing his mom start to go down into that spiral. So I think since he learned that his mom is spiraling, he is like, I'm going to kill Phil. Like, I'm going to kill Benedict Cumberbatch to save my mom from what happened to my dad. So the next morning, Phil isn't up doing his job, and Jesse Plemons goes up to their room, and Phil is just very, very clearly ill, and his hand is super infected. They take him to town, and then there's a hard cut to picking out a casket. They bury Benedict. They come back to the house. The kid... Oh, before they leave... Okay, that's right. The other important thing is before they leave for town to take Benedict to the doctor, Benedict is delirious.
And he's trying to give the kid the rope.
Yep, he runs out to the barn, grabs the finished rope he made, and is trying to give it to the kid, because I think he knows he's dying, but he wants to make that connection. Like, he's like, I've got to have some connection. Like, he's so... the main tragedy of his character is that he lost that bond with Bronco Henry. He tried to have it with his brother George, but lost it because George got married and has other concerns. So he's desperate to find any human connection, and this kid is like his last chance, and he never gets it to him.
He never gets it to him because the kid is not like the kid's awake. He's just not. He's like hiding.
Yeah,
from him, right?
The kid is actively denying it. The kid has no sympathy for Benedict. He's like, nope, you are a cancer that is killing my mom. I am going to destroy you.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah. And so the funeral happens. They come home. Jesse Plemons and Kirsten Dunst like kiss. They've clearly like kind of bonded. She's, like they've reset the relationship. And the kid is watching. He has gloves on, and he puts the fucking rope. He handles the rope under his bed, and looks at them. And the movie ends.
Well, he looks at them, and then he turns away from the window and smiles, and then the movie ends. So it's like,
it's amazing because it basically is like, oh yeah, burn my paper flowers, why don't you? I'm gonna ruin you.
Basically, the first thing that happens
at the beginning, he makes these paper flowers. And
he makes these nice paper flowers, because he's like, well, and his mom, Kirsten Dunst, comes in and is like, oh, that's cool. That's cool that you did that. And he's like, well, yeah, I figured you used to garden, but we can't really garden out here, so I made some flowers while the garden's out of season that you can put on the table. And she puts them on the table, and Benedict burns one to be an asshole. And the kid just kind of narrows his eyes at him.
I feel like that's what he was like, I'll fucking kill you. I'm gonna make you marry. I'm gonna make your brother marry my mom, and I'm gonna slowly drive you into
just looking at him like, I'm gonna fucking destroy you.
Yeah. And that's the idea, is like the kid starts, you're kind of like, oh, this kid needs to be protected.
No, he doesn't.
And then by the end, you're like, nope, he doesn't need to be protected now, does he?
The kid is fine.
Yeah, the kid's doing great.
Like, you start learning, it's such an interesting...
if anything, you're like, oh my God, dial it back, kid.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
So they need to be protected from this kid. It's so interesting that they start with Phil in one place as being this hard as hell guy who's like, oh, he's fine. Like, this guy he's like a rock in weather. He can withstand anything. And then this kid, you're like, oh, this soft kid is being thrown. Like, the kid is presented as weak and he's presented as strong. But as the more we learn about them, the more we learn that the opposite is actually true. To the point where,
which it does say a lot about masculinity in that. That does, like, I've at least in my life encountered like the hyper masculine man who, the more you get to know them, you're like, oh, you're terrified.
It's armor.
Yeah, it's armor, and it happens a lot. And so that is what they're exploring.
Yeah, and there's another element there where in that same conversation where they're out repairing the fence, they're eating the rabbit with Benedict's wounded hand, and Benedict says something about how, like, Bronco Henry told me life is like, it's about, I forget. And the kid's like, well, my dad told me life is about obstacles. And you have to get those remove those obstacles from your path. And then Benedict's like, well, that is kind of, that's just another way of saying the same mentality. Yeah. It's another way of saying the same idea. And the kid says, like, if my dad told me I was too strong. And Benedict laughs at that. But, like, the more we learn about the kid, where it's like, yeah, he found his dad's body and cut it down. He's not sentimental about death. And he's right there. He's like, yeah, life is about obstacles. He doesn't say, like, overcoming the obstacles or anything. He says removing the obstacles. There's also, and this is just kind of a more subtle thing, but, like, the way he kills Benedict is with poison, which, tradition, quote unquote, traditionally, and like as a literary device, it's a woman's weapon. So that's like another layer of like the idea of masculinity. He doesn't get into a shootout with Benedict. He fucking tricks him and poisons him with a disease.
Yeah, I wanted him to, like throw a hungry dog at him and be like, "That's the power of the dog," and then credits. But that's not what happened.
No.
Yeah, no, it's very much, that's part of what's great about it, is it ends with like a whimper for that reason, where it's like, yeah, he just fucking poisons him. He wakes up and he's like, I gotta go to the doctor, and then he's dead.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. It's pretty great.
Yep.
Because it's just, he's playing smart. It's one of those things where you're right, is that it's like traditionally a feminine thing, I guess. But it's always like, whenever I watch movies like this, those are the things that I'm like, do that. Like, why don't you do that? Where the characters never do the smart thing.
Mm-hmm.
This character does the smart thing.
He's not gonna beat Phil in a fight or like outshoot him in a gunfight or something. No.
Yeah, it's like, no, I'm gonna poison this asshole. What makes it so effective is that, and I think they did this very, very well, is that Benedict, you feel bad because it's like, well, he's being nicer to him, and the kid's like, no, I'm still gonna poison you. Doesn't fucking matter. Because they do keep one key thing, which is he's never nicer to the mom.
He never lets up on Rose, yeah.
And that's what it comes down to, is like, honestly, if he was nice to Rose, I think the kid would have been like, never mind.
Yeah.
Like, I won't kill you. But he never, like, it doesn't matter how nice he is to the kid, he's still a shit to his mom. And he's like, you're gonna die before my mom dies. And it's like, yeah, I don't blame the kid. But it's like the fact that he could be so stone cold about it is what's horrifying.
And it starts out with narration from the kid where he's like, I had to take steps to protect my mom. What kind of man would I be if I didn't? So it's like the movie sets you up with that idea, but it doesn't become clear until it's mostly unfolded, which is really, really satisfying to watch.
It is, because it all feels like, oh, is this going to lead to some fight or some, like, you know, like some him stabbing him in his sleep or some gory like shock moment, and then it's over before you realize it. Like, and that's what makes it really good, because what we're talking about with the anthrax, we sort of told it like knowing what was going to happen at the time. Like, it very slow burns in where you're like, oh shit, like, and then by the time it all clicks, Benedict Cumberbatch is already dead.
He's in a box.
Yeah, and so you're waiting for this like fucking big climax, and it passes you by, and you're like, wait, oh shit, it's over. Like, and it's really well done in that regard. I think it's just really clever.
I'm pretty sure he played the kid in the American remake of Let the Right One In, Let Me In. So it's like,
no shit.
Yeah, it's like this kid is just like has a knack for these characters.
yeah. He's like, he reads it and he's like, yeah, I got this.
I know what
it's fine.
Is. Yeah. I'll go ahead and be Nightcrawler sometimes, but mostly I'm this kid.
Yeah, a fucking bravo movie. I'll say, like, in terms of award season, I don't know. We'll see what else gets nominated. I don't know. It's definitely a very good movie. It's kind of like a palate cleanser for me, where it's like, this is an adult drama. I fucking love it, you know? Just so, like, I don't know, nice to see something that genuinely surprised me.
Yeah, it was, yeah. And there's a lot of, the director, I don't know that I've seen any of her other movies, but she
what
does.
What else has she done?
I'm not sure. She's another Kiwi filmmaker. This movie's like a joint New Zealand American production.
This was filmed in New Zealand.
It was
right?
filmed in New Zealand. Yeah,
that's my only note. It was just like, this isn't America, you guys.
Yeah, it looks like why does Montana look like Middle Earth?
Yeah, like they're driving on these fucking
But the landscape,
Lord of the Rings
like, there's such good tension in just those landscape shots, and there's one scene in particular where I was like, this is fucking good. It's when she's practicing the song on the piano, and Benedict comes in and goes upstairs. And starts playing the same song on his banjo. And
that's so good.
There's a shot where it starts kind of down the hallway, looking at Kirsten Dunst sitting at the piano playing it, and each time she gets to a certain point in the song, and just she fucks it up and has to stop and start over. And the camera, each time she stops, pushes in a little bit closer.
Yeah,
and then pushes in a little bit closer each time she stops and restarts. And I was like, man, that's a fucking really good way to like represent the tension of like, and then it cuts to like her point of view, a reverse shot, and it's Benedict upstairs staring at her through his open bedroom door with his banjo. So it's like shit like that where it's also a very well directed movie.
Yeah, this director, she did. Speaking of, she did The Piano. 1993's The Piano. Yeah, she's been around since the fucking 80s. just not. I mean, I haven't seen much of her stuff, but watching this, I'm like, man, I've been sleeping on this person.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, because, shit, I got to go back and watch some of this stuff. She did something called Bright Star, which I don't know. I haven't seen it. She did In the Cut with, is that Ruffles? It is. It's Mark Ruffalo's in this, and Meg Ryan. This is 2003.
Word.
It's Mark Ruffalo with a dirtbag mustache.
Oh, hell
I don't know if there's really much else I need to know about this movie before watching it. But yeah, I'm like watching this. I'm like, oh shit. Yeah, now I got homework. I gotta go back and watch some of these movies.
I've never seen The Piano. I guess I gotta watch it now.
I never seen The Piano either, but it's got Samuel Neal.
Yeah, and Harvey Keitel's Junk.
Fuck, it's got Harvey Keitel's Junk.
I think so. I'm pretty sure I remember
shit.
that. I remember that tidbit about The Piano.
Great. That's got the Keitel Junk. That's great. Let's see. Yeah, she's done a lot of shorts too. Like, I think the reason why maybe people haven't really, like, a lot of her stuff feels like she did a lot in the 90s, and then recently she's been doing like shorts and stuff like that. So I don't know, maybe she's just been off people's radars. But my goodness, this was a delightful film.
Yeah.
She's worked with Harvey Keitel a few times. Something called Holy Smoke in 1999.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, maybe it's just because I think she's probably making more like overseas films that maybe we don't see in America. I don't know. I don't know, man. I'm making excuses here, but
yeah,
I should.
Sounds like you're
watch
just
some of these movies.
making excuses for why we haven't watched your movies. Yeah. I don't have anything else to add. We've pretty well gone over it.
Yeah, man. Just fucking yeah. If you have, I mean, you shouldn't be listening to this, but if you're one of those weirdos who doesn't mind getting spoiled for movies, go see this movie. It's really solid. I like it a lot. It's an unconventional Western, and it definitely deserves, some awards and shit. Like, it's just like really solid. Really solid.
Yeah. It's just a good ass movie, man. I don't know.
Yeah. It's somehow like probably the most interesting thing to me was that so little happens for so long, and yet I was riveted the whole time. And so a lot of that I think is to the credit of these actors. All of them.
The direction.
And the direction. Yeah. And I think, that's why I'm like, oh, they should probably get some awards here.
Mm-hmm.
Because they are killing it throughout the movie. I think I have nothing else to say. It's just fucking good.
Watch it.
Mm-hmm. Watch it.
Tell them what else they should do, Dave.
Oh, they should check out our Patreon. Patreon.com/gamefully unemployed. If you go on there, you get exclusive podcasts like Tom and Jeff Watch Batman and Fox Mulder is a Maniac. We also do some exclusive podcasts with the Small Beans Network, and that's Spielboys and Star Trek The Next Futurama. I think next week there's a new Star Trek on our Patreon, and there was just a new Spielboys too. So yeah, check that shit out.
Yeah. We also have a store. Head over to GamefullyUnemployed.com, where you'll find a link to our Teespring store, where we have all kinds of cool original artwork and designs you can get on t-shirts, stickers, mugs, posters, all kinds of things. So check that out.
Yeah.
And leave us a review, please.
Yeah, you can review us. You can review us all night long, baby.
All night
long. All right, I guess
Poison
that's where we're ending.
Benedict all night long.
All right, bye.
All right. Bye.